headhunter agency here in Europe looking for a new CEO. And of course, when something like this is happening in big companies in Switzerland, this is always, of course, also very interesting for investors.
Well, the euro has been gaining, but let's talk Bitcoin. Bitcoin seems to be flirting now with new highs of $10,000. Now, some folks are cheering while others are waving the caution flag. Are you part of the ongoing cryptomania community, Daniel?
Well, no, I'm actually not at all, I can tell you. But I can tell you that investors are keeping a very close eye on this. We had a statement last week from the Bundesbank CEO here stating that for him, those bitcoins, those cryptocurrencies are not a real currency, is that it's not real money. But investors are really paying attention. Now, you just mentioned that, you know, with a level of already $10,000 reaching pretty much record after record. So investors are really paying attention to all of this. But it's still going to take some time, and investors here, at least in Germany, they don't feel that there could be sort of a competition to the euro, but a completely different picture, for example, when you look over to Venezuela, a country that has been on the edge for a long time, going through political and also financial crisis with a level of inflation almost estimated for next year at about 2,000%. There, in this country, those cryptocurrencies are kind of like a parallel currency at the moment, because investors and also just normal people, they don't trust in the normal currency anymore. Also for them, it's very difficult to get any kind of dollar because of the restriction that have been enforced by the central bank. And the good thing for people, for example, in Venezuela is that the Bitcoin and those cryptocurrencies, they don't depend in any way on decisions made by a central bank. That's why we are seeing in a country like Venezuela, Bitcoin already very important. Here in Europe and Germany, investors are paying attention to it, but it's still kind of more like a game.
Well, for me, caution is the answer. Well, Daniel, I'll let you go now. Enjoy the rest of the day. We have a long week to go, and we have a lot to talk about. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll move on now to the U.S. West Stock Index futures pointed to a slightly higher open as investors looked to the latest batch of economic data and earnings. On the data front, new home sales figures are expected to be released at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by the Dallas Fed's Texas Manufacturing Outlook Survey at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, looking at earnings, tech data, Tuniu and Thor Industries are set to publish their latest financial figures. On the central bank front, two speeches by the U.S. Federal Reserve are set to take place today. Minneapolis Fed President Anil Kashkari will be delivering remarks at Winona State University in Minnesota. New York Fed President William Dudley is expected to be at a moderated conversation called U.S. Economy 10 Years After the Crisis, organized by the University of California, Berkeley in New York. Investors will be watching each discussion closely for any comments about the state of the U.S. economy. And on Friday, equities in the U.S. rose by the close as investors placed bets on a strong holiday shopping season. Consequently, investors are likely to be paying close attention to how certain retailers perform today as the Cyber Monday shopping spree commences. Looking at those futures numbers, looking at the green, though flat, 0.14%. That's for Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, 0.21% up, and NASDAQ, 0.32% up as at the last check. And in Asia, the indices closed down today despite the firmer lead from Wall Street last week. Chinese markets traded lower as investors kept an eye on developments in the bond market, while South Korea's Kospi slid on weakness in tech names. Japan's Nikkei 225 erased early gains to slip 0.24% by the end of the session. Across the Korean Strait, the Kospi fell 1.44% to end at 2,507.81, with tech stocks dragging on the broader index. index. The Korean won was also in focus ahead of the Bank of Korea's Thursday interest rate decision, with majority of economists indicating that a 25 basis point rate hike was expected. The Australian ASX 200 inched higher by 0.1% to close at 5,998 points after flatlining earlier in the session. Greater China equities slid. Market continued to focus on the rise in bond yields on the mainland. The Shanghai Composite lost 0.92% to close, and the Shenzhen Composite fell 1.56%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was down 0.58%. And back here in Africa, 3 of Africa's largest telecommunication towers companies plan to pursue share sales in either London or New York early next year, taking advantage of high industry valuations to fund expansion. Closely held his towers, targeting an enterprise value of $10 billion, plans to list in New York. Heloids Towers Africa LLP is looking at valuation of at least $2 billion, while Eaton Towers Limited is aiming for about $2 billion. Now, both will list in London, while Eaton is also considering a secondary listing in Johannesburg. Africa's phone mast industry is booming as rising wireless device use leads to a leapfrogging of traditional landline connections. Mobile subscriptions in sub-Saharan Africa are set to surge 41% to 990 million in 5 years. The planned stock sales are being timed to line up with robust interest among investors for the stable returns and growth offered by tower companies which host equipment for carriers on their masts. Meanwhile, African telecommunications group Econet is considering selling shares on the London Stock Exchange at a valuation of about $8 billion next year after combining new and existing assets. Now, that valuation will be based on an enlarged company partly forged through the acquisition of additional African phone businesses. The plans have not been finalized, and the final valuation may change depending on market conditions. Econet, founded by Zimbabwean phone tycoon Steve Masiowa, is in discussions with Millicom International Cellular SA to buy some African assets from the Luxembourg-based carrier, although no final decision has been made. Millicom, controlled by Sweden's Stenback family, is scaling back in Africa to focus on Latin America. Its holdings in Tanzania, Chad, Ghana and Rwanda serve some 25 million users, which could complement Econet's operations in Zimbabwe and South Africa. When we return, we'll look at South Africa's Tiger Brands full-year earnings. Do stay with us.